Monday, we also go to Limpopo for public hearings. There's a lot that's going on here. But honorable members, let me then begin the meeting. We have a short but long agenda with a lot of discussion, a lot of work that needs to be done. Honorable members, today gives us an opportunity to really set the process going forward in terms of the meetings. So what I'm going to do is, that is the nature of the agenda that is before us. We have 2 reports to consider, and naturally the items follow on from each other with a motion of desirability to adopt the first report, and then we move on to the public sector and related payments bill, which will then be the first report we will consider. I'm hoping we'll get through that so that we can then begin to prepare it as it will be debated tomorrow in the National Assembly. And then we finish with a motion of desirability for the Division of Revenue bill. And then we will then consider the 2025 Division of Revenue bill. That is in essence the agenda for today. We have set today aside precisely to deal with these 2 reports without any other disruptions, whether it's a sitting or any other thing. I'm committed to making sure we get through it in full detail so that we can allow members to make inputs and we can ensure that as a report and as a committee, we've satisfied ourselves with the inputs that go in there. With that being the agenda, may I ask if there's a member who would like to move for the adoption of the agenda? Honorable Bateman will move. Is there a member who would like to second that? Honorable Lekhanyane is here. Just in terms of opening this morning, let me note a number of the apologies for today. The apologies that are before us are Honorable Kwankwa, who is on study leave. Honorable Douglas, who I'm going to, Honorable Molefe, I'm going to safely presume, Hore, you will then be co-opted in the place of Honorable Douglas. Is that correct? So let me deal with that matter last. We have apologies from Honorable Kamede, and then we've got an apology from Noliolo Makazi, who is on leave, and Mr. Majosi, who is our media person, has sent an apology today. Those then being the apologies, and noting the apology of Honorable Douglas, are there any other additional apologies from any other member? Honorable Kalega Mazibu.
Thank you, Chair. Honorable Sikede will be arriving late. He couldn't get the flight from Kimberley yesterday, but he's landing at 9:30. Yeah.
No, that is well noted in that. Honorable members, given my earlier notice, is to say that naturally, Honorable Molefe, as a co-opted member of the committee, Honorable Molefe, is that so? Let me allow the MK party to speak on this matter.
It is indeed so, Chair.
Honorable Molefe, welcome. That being dealt with means that Honorable Molefe has got full voting rights in the committee today as a co-opted member in place of Honorable Douglas. I think it's important to establish that upfront so that members know the process going forward. With the apologies and the welcome of new members, Honorable Molefe, I want to say to you upfront, when you get nominated to play for the national team, the protocol is different from all the other committees you have been to. This is the Premier League, so welcome. Perhaps. But thank you, Honorable Molefe. I look forward to our engagement today. With that in mind, Honorable Mashile, may I ask you to read into the record the motion of desirability as it speaks to the pension and related matters bill.
Thank you, Chairperson, and good morning, everyone on the platform. Motion of desirability Public Sector Pension and Related Payments Bill, that in the opinion of the committee, the legislation is desirable to provide that certain public sector pension, post-retirement medical and other pension-related benefits under legislation and collective agreements are direct charges against the National Revenue Fund, and to provide for matters incidental thereto. Thank you, Chairperson.
In principle, the question on the table is whether do we desire to have the respective bill that has been put before us. Is there a member who would like to support and second the motion being put before us? Firstly, if we can adopt the motion of desirability. Honorable Talega Mazibugo, is there a member who will second the adoption of the motion of desirability as it speaks to the related matters bill? Honorable Lekhanyan. With that, it is then the motion of desirability being adopted. The committee then can proceed to considering the draft report on the respective bill that is before us. We shall then proceed. Thank you very much, honorable members. Typically, I want to make the nature of the process as we go through this is, at first, members would have been given the opportunity to consider the report over the last number of days. Let me make a few remarks that even for me, I had to bring due consideration. The first is that we're dealing with budget version 3. Which has in essence meant that even though you can adjust many items along the go, you can't adjust the time. Because if you have Comrades Marathon to run, it has to finish at a particular time. Whether you start later or earlier, the close time remains the same. I say that to mean that the budget naturally has to be adopted by the 30th of July this year, which in essence means that whether we're dealing with version 1, version 2, or version 3 of the matter, the timeline still remains likewise. And so that's the first issue. So the work that we've got to do here today has an urgency about it because it confronts a particular finishing line as it speaks to when a budget has to be adopted. The second item that I want to raise is the fact that typically our committee goes through this report and will work through this one. We work through it page by page and allow members to make inputs into the respective page that we are in, so as to not have a discussion that is one starts at the end of the report and then we must have a discussion about the first page of the report. So we do that so that members have also got the opportunity to make inputs, make submissions as they go. Members equally so would have been sent, as I said, the reports timeously in terms of how we process the issue. So I'd like to appreciate that members can make inputs into the text that is before us as we work through. And then lastly, that it is our intended objective to finish this first report and have it ATC'd so that the debate tomorrow can proceed, notwithstanding the 3-day rule to which we will then speak to the Chief Whip, have engaged with the Chief Whip to request of the National Assembly to waive the 3-day rule. So procedurally, that is how I'd like to proceed today so that the discussions are guided in that manner. Honorable Molefe.
Chair, just a small correction. This is not a continuation of any process. You will remember that the court set aside the previous budget's attempts by the National Treasury to pass the budget through. So by setting aside, it means that we have to start the process de novo. And the minister even used those words, that the process has to start de novo. So let's not put ourselves under pressure. We have to do things properly and not be burdened by the fact that there were previous failed attempts. This process must get the attention that it deserves without being burdened by the fact that there were failed attempts in the past. And so I just wanted to correct that, Chair, and say that we're not working towards any deadline. What we are doing here is we are going through the report thoroughly and giving it the necessary attention and diligence that it requires without saying this is 3.0, 2.0. There is no 3.0, it's actually 1, because the process had to start de novo, which means right from the beginning. Thank you.
Honorable Molefe, I don't want you to misinterpret what I'm saying. All I merely alluded to, and I take your input quite correctly, this is an independent process in and of itself. All I'm merely alluding to is that as we deal just with this process alone, what has not changed is the deadline that speaks to when the budget must be passed, which is the 30th of July, is the point I'm merely alluding to. That date is inadjustable in the sense that if we go into the 1st of August without a budget that is passed, all that will eventually happen is that the legislative process of then insisting that the budget must go into 40%, the spending priorities go adjusted to 40%, then 10%. That is all I'm alluding to. I'm not saying that we mustn't give this particular day and its process its due course. It must be done. That's why we've set as a committee aside the whole day without any other interruptions. That is the point I'm trying to allude to. Thank you, Honourable Member. Let us then move to the first report that is before us. This indeed is the draft report. We don't have to reread. Wait. Sorry, I need to open the correct one. I had the next one in front of me here. So let's start with the first one. Waitsi matlhwaka a ntshokodisa re le kganyane. Yaanong ha ke shebile mo screening sele ke a bona gore ke lebile kgakala.
Oh, I really can't now get a coffee. At least you.
Oh, get the sion. Ya bona. Ke swantse ke itle yalo. Hey, ke tla itshepisa yalo ke tla swanda ke itle. Right, honorable members, the report is in front of you and certainly in front of me now. We can begin. Let's have a look at page 1 of the report. Is there any member who would like to make adjustments, input into page 1 of the report? Honorable Molefe?
This is the appropriations.
No.
Oh, okay.
This is the pension and related payments bill. Honorable Molefe?
Chair, it's actually it's a general comment. What I found strange was that we are trying to pay these pensions from the National Revenue Fund. And these payments relate to the Government Employees Pension Fund and arise out of the activities of the Government Employees Pension Fund. Now, the National Revenue Fund is under stress, as we saw, because the Minister gave us an austerity budget. Why do we take this money from the National Revenue Fund and not from the surplus that is sitting at the Government Employees Pension Fund? Because the Government Employees Pension Fund is 110% funded at the moment in terms of its liabilities. And it has excess funds running into close to 300 billion rand. So why are we not utilizing that surplus to fund these incidental things and putting a strain on a budget that is already a shoestring budget as it is.
I hear that point, Honorable Molefe, and I think perhaps maybe I'm going to take it and put it as part of the debate that we can have later in the recommendation, because the intent of the bill is slightly different in this regard. So perhaps maybe if I can ask that particular point, because at this point in time we're just dealing with a background to the issue, and then we'll get to the end in that sense. Is that
As it pleases the Chair.
Thank you, sir. Can we then, in the light of that, proceed then to page 2 with members who'd like to make inputs in this regard? We then will proceed, Mashile, to page 3. And then we proceed to page 4. Can we then move to page 5? Can we then get to page 6? Can we then move to page 7? Right. I think, Mashile, there's another page after this, page 8. Now let's wait at this point. Honorable Bateman and Honorable Wakelin, and then Honorable Molefe, then let's have that input as we go in that regard. Starting with Honorable Bateman.
Thank you very much, Honourable Chair. Good morning to all my honourable colleagues. On 8.4, the concerns raised by the FFC over the rationale behind the provisions. I reviewed again what the FFC said about the bill, and my conclusion was that the FFC actually needs to engage more with National Treasury about it, rather than the committee engaging more, because I think through our engagements we've managed to understand what the rationale is for the bill, and I think from what the FFC wrote, they didn't have the benefit of that engagement, and I think as a result some of their comments were actually slightly misdirected, and that's not to blame them, but I think they were just operating with less information than what we had, or less context, shall we say. So my suggestion would be that we remove the last sentence of 8.4. The committee commits to further engage with the Minister of Finance and National Treasury to clarify the concerns raised by the Commission.
Swiso, and I hear the point that Honourable Bateman is making, because having engaged the chair of the FFC, there's a continual dialogue that they are seeking as far as the IGR framework in terms of their engagement with National Treasury. Can you respond to that particular point so that we can make the appropriate edit as we go? Textually.
It's fine, Chairperson. We can remove that sentence.
We don't have to. I think we can clarify it to strengthen the need for the FFC to engage in that regard. I think that's what Honourable Bateman is requesting.
In view of the comments, I think I underlined what Honourable Bateman said, to say that instead of just doing away with the whole idea, we should rather direct it to say that the FFC is the one that has to engage with the minister, not necessarily the committee, based on the motivation that you say. So we retain the sentence, but we change the meaning, if that is acceptable. Okay.
Honorable
we
Payton.
can,
Yeah?
Chairperson, we can, I'm agreeing that let's delete the last sentence, but we can't put it in our report that the FCFC must engage with them, is that they've got their own processes. So we can delete that sentence. I'm fine with it.
Okay. Honorable Molefe, just on this point,
Yeah.
that Honorable Bateman raised.
Chair, we don't have a problem with the committee helping to facilitate the discussions between the Treasury and the FFC. Although there is a legislative obligation to consult the FFC on the budget, the FFC always complains that the necessary consultations do not happen, they do not happen in time. It looks like there is something wrong between the FFC and the Treasury. So I don't see a problem with us or this committee playing a role in facilitating that. You see, when people don't talk, you see what happens in Iran. It's because people don't talk. So let's encourage more and more debate and consultation so that for the sake of peace, Chair.
I think part of the dilemma is there is an IGR process, and that's the point that I'm just trying to find the right language, because the FFC's biggest burden is that the IGR process isn't always followed in as far as engaging them on matters. That's the fundamental, broader principle. How you phrase that then becomes a function of a recommendation that perhaps could, to underscore the point that Honorable Bateman is making, is to uphold the engagement as it speaks to the issue of the intergovernmental framework, that there must be thorough engagement between that and the FFC and National Treasury. I think we can uphold that principle and state it as that. I'll come back to you, Musa. Or let me take your point, Musa.
Yes, Chair, I think, yeah, we agree. I think to that end, then we can then put that point under recommendations.
Just phrase the point so that we understand as is or rephrased. Sorry, Chair.
I will engage you. I'm just at this point in time looking at the exact text so that we can make input on the basis of a text, so that it doesn't. Honorable Bateman, have you got a proposed text that you'd like to put on the table?
Honourable Chair, I didn't have something worded, but I think just to try and suggest something, I think we're saying that the committee recommends that the Minister and National Treasury engage with the FFC and vice versa, so that there can be mutual understanding of the intent and implications of the bill. How's that?
Okay. Let me get something there. Honorable Talaga Mazibu.
Well,
Can you put the microphone on, because
sorry, Chair. Chair, I'm debating with myself here to say it is also the responsibility of this committee on behalf of Parliament to hold the executive to account. For me, when I read this, I didn't see any issue if the committee commits to further engage the Minister and National Treasury, because they have to report to the committee anyway. So, yeah, I maybe unless I misunderstand the issue. Thank you.
So in part, and perhaps maybe this may be a point of clarification, we have in the past, through the Budget Council, of which I serve on behalf of the committee, sought to find the best ways for the FFC and National Treasury to be able to engage, Honorable Bateman. So what I would rather say is that rather than trying to conflate too many issues, that ultimately that the intergovernmental framework, as it speaks to the ministry's engagement with the FFC, be upheld. And as a committee, we want to ensure that that process, because it's our laws, Parliament has a duty to make sure its laws are upheld. So however way you phrase that, I think what does that sentence say? This is that the Minister of Finance and National Treasury engage with the FFC. Leave it over the concerns raised as stipulated with the Intergovernmental Relations Framework. That is it. I would leave it at that.
The Chair, what should I do? Should I delete the concerns it raised, or should I leave it as it is?
No, you get comma as stipulated
Okay.
in the Intergovernmental Framework. That's all. Honorable member, yeah.
Chairperson, as a suggestion is that we leave it at 8.4 as it is, and then also highlight the part in question, which is the committee commits to further engage with the minister as a recommendation. But we leave that sentence there as a finding and as a finding at 8.4 as a finding and as an observation of the committee. We leave it like that, but also highlight on our recommendations now that the committee commits to further engage, or as a suggestion from Honorable Bateman as a recommendation. But we leave that paragraph as it is.
Honorable Bateman, in my reading of this situation, I genuinely do not see it as a hill to die on, as it were. So, given what Honorable Member is saying, and hearing what Honorable Kalega Mazibuko is saying, may I, as it stands now, and where it goes on into the recommendation, can we be happy to leave it in that way? It's two separate inputs, and it grows further in the recommendations, making a suggestion about the intergovernmental framework. Does that satisfy the question you are raising?
Chair, I would just perhaps suggest that we also ask the FFC to submit a written update to us on their view of the bill in the light of the engagement with the National Treasury, just to close the loop on
sure.
what we're saying.
And they would have to, in any case, given the fact that the FFC comes to brief this committee. All right, so we can leave that at that. Honorable Wakelin, you were next on the point.
Sorry, Chair.
Yeah, well,
Do you mind if I just continue? I had one other.
Oh, there's more.
Just one other.
Yeah, sure, have a go.
So just with regard to that recommendation that's up there, just to finish that up, we're just saying that we would add that the FFC would report back to the committee in this regard. So I don't know, just for the sake of the version that we're looking at on the screen there, if we could add that. And then I think just one other recommendation is practically what we're saying, that now that these become direct charges, if there's an unexpected increase in the level of the expense in a year, it will be charged automatically. It won't have to go through a special appropriation if it's not able to be accommodated within the environments and adjustments within Vote 8 of National Treasury's budget vote. So we do need to be aware of that, I think. And I think the recommendation should be that National Treasury and this committee should be vigilant about the level of charges to the National Revenue Fund in terms of this bill from year to year to ensure that they remain affordable to the fiscus and are not being abused. So that would be a further recommendation that I would like to.
I think there's a point about the engagement between Parliament and it giving, and I think by Parliament it extends to this committee, in dealing with that particular point in the report itself. But it can highlight the fact that to monitor the fiscal prudence of the issue. But it certainly does ask Parliament. Certainly my input into the bill was Parliament's ability to give oversight to this process is absolutely paramount, and of which part of the oversight speaks to the fiscal prudence of the issue, as it says there. Okay, Honorable Bateman, let me try and avoid a dialogue, but you finish your input so that we can finish the point.
Thank you, Chair.
Mashile, can I ask that the guys just hold on for 1 second?
Yeah, so just to clarify, I think there's two issues there, Chair. I hear you on the amendments by the Minister and making sure that Parliament is aware of the amendments. But even in terms of the existing legislation which is listed on the schedule, those charges are going to start coming through directly now to the National Revenue Fund, whereas in the past they've gone under Treasury's budget vote, which means that the process is now changing. So if there are excessive charges that start coming through, they're just going to come through automatically. They're not going to have to go through a budgetary process to have extra budget released through a special appropriation.
Okay.
They're not going to come up when the Finance Committee is reviewing Vote 8 and debating Vote 8. They're all going to be direct charges now. So that puts an added level of responsibility on the Treasury and also on us as a committee to monitor what those direct charges are and to make sure that they don't get out of hand. And I think that's the point that I'm trying to
Fair
make.
point.
Yeah.
Fair point.
Thanks, Chair.
Honorable Mkhonto.
Thanks, Chair. Ngiyakubingelela, Chair, honorable members and colleagues. Chair, my report is on the cell phone and I can't follow the pages. But the last paragraph of the introduction is talking, the whole paragraph is talking about the processes that the bill was subjected to. And then there is the invitation for public comments from the 5th to the 11th of June. And ultimately, we got one stakeholder that participated, Chair. Was that time enough? I'm looking at, I was first amused by the fact that only one stakeholder responded. And then when I went to the processes of the bill, then I saw that it was given only 5 days for public comments.
I think, whilst I take the point that you are making, we often make open submissions to different people, and we had public hearings. That's why in the report, I think it's a PBO, it's a FFC, it's COSATU, it's all of that, and people choose who can respond to that. I agree with you, more can be done. So I don't disagree on that point, but I do think on the Division of Revenue Bill, there is a recommendation that speaks to how we can strengthen and enhance public participation in the lawmaking process anyways. And I worry that uniquely in this bill, you are going to have limited submissions because there are limited interest groups that speak to this particular matter. So Honorable Mkhonto, I think in this regard, all the committee can bolster the point by saying naturally there should be more public consultation, but on this particular one, I think that is the process that unfolded. So we can't change the process. You can't say something happened in a way it didn't happen. You know, as one guy.
I get you, Chair. I'm thinking about the future.
Yeah.
That maybe in the future we can improve.
Sure.
I mean, 5 days and only one stakeholder responded, and then I was like, maybe by the time people saw all these advertisements, the due date had already gone.
No, nguzwa kahle ke. I think Sfiso, I don't necessarily. Perhaps maybe the point to make would be just to simply a recommendation that sits similar to the Division of Revenue Bill, that enough time for public consultation be made available. Would that be a fair point? I don't know if you want to respond to that, Sfiso. As the author.
Not really, Chairperson, but I think I get the point. But the reason why we've got the those number of days is because, as you are aware, the bill was tabled. The advertisement, once the budget is tabled, and then there are processes that must take place internally to do the advertisement. So we were limited with that time. But I'd rather not say let's make a recommendation, but as a committee we can agree that probably when we must try by all means to start the process of the advertisement early. It can be just our internal arrangement, not necessarily putting something on there.
And I do think, Uguti, we belabor this particular point. And I know these are two separate bills, so I'm not disputing the point you are making, but we do belabor this point as far as the Money Bills and Related Matters Act in the processing of a bill in that regard. So, Honorable Mkonto, if I can, may I suggest that we take that point and then bolster it there, because it's covered in full depth there, whilst these are two separate bills. I hear the point. Let's move. I see Honorable Molefe. I'm going to come to you at the end. Can I go to Honorable Wakelin? You had your hand up because now we're going into other issues.
Good morning, Chair. Thanks. You make a point in the document that relates to the 3-month threshold. I was actually, in fact, covered by my colleague on the matter of the risks associated with the bill, and he's put it through very properly, so I'm happy with that. But the second part to that talks to the risk associated with the 3-month rule, and I see that you've eloquently picked it up. My question is, what will the recommendation be? Are we saying that we are supporting the bill because we realize the pressures, but that the minister would come back with an amendment eventually disregarding that 3-month rule?
We make the point that obviously Parliament is supreme, and therefore the consensus must be found. The minister can't just say, well, after 3 months, I assume the thing is agreed to. That's the point we're trying to make there. If we can strengthen it, then it's Parliament. The fight, even in my inputs tomorrow in tabling the bill, I want to reassert the supremacy of Parliament as it speaks to this issue. So that is the thing. But let me recognize you, Honorable Wakely.
That's exactly the point. So are we saying, eventually down the road, somewhere along the line, the minister has to come back with an amendment bill? But I don't read that to be that clear. Unless you say to me, no, that's the intention, then I'm happy with that.
No, the intention is to say consensus. It must come through. You can't. We disagree just with the idea that silence means consent. Principally, Honourable Bateman, on this point.
Yes, thank you, Honourable Chair.
Yeah, Bo.
Then shall we add that recommendation then that the committee recommends that an amendment to the bill should be processed by National Treasury to remove the 3-month deeming provision. In other words, what I'm saying, Chair, is I think we're all agreed that this is a concern, that it just automatically becomes law after 3 months even if Parliament doesn't officially agree to it. And so we're recommending that the bill should be changed. The problem is because of the timeframes we're working under, we can't change the bill now. We're actually then going to have to put it as a recommendation to say, please, can an amendment be processed later in the year to remove this provision? That's effectively what I'm hearing. Because it's no good saying we don't like it, but then we sign it into law. Because at the end of the day, after our objections have been forgotten about, the law will still be there.
I read it to mean that if after 3 months, of course within 3 months, Parliament can also reject. In which instance, once you reject the bill in 3 months, an amendment has to be brought, or you have to find another mechanism. So are we debating the timeline? Because if for example, let me use a different process. This is my interpretation. I don't want to get this wrong. If, for example, we woke up today and said, no, we actually reject the Division of Revenue Bill. We reject the entire, or we reject the Appropriations Bill. And Parliament votes to say it rejects the Appropriations Bill. What follows on from that is that clearly an amendment must be brought forward, right? So that is consistent across any other lawmaking aspect. Us saying it here doesn't just apply here. So what I'm saying is that it is common cause. The point to make is that Parliament must reach a decision one way or another, which means if it endorses, then the process carries on. But if it rejects, an amendment must be brought. So the point is taken. At least that's my reading of the issue. Yeah.
What we're doing with this bill is if we agree to it, then what Parliament is saying is that if in the future we as Parliament do not respond within 3 months, either to approve, edit, amend, reject, we just do nothing, then the changes that the Minister makes to the schedule will become law. So we're agreeing now, effectively we're agreeing now that will always be the case with regard to changes to this schedule on this bill. And I think that's where we're actually giving away the legislative authority. And I think that's where the report is picking up some concerns, and we're asking how to handle that. And I think what we're saying is we should be actually asking for an amendment to remove that, or that's the point of discussion. Yeah.
Let me recognize Honorable Molefe.
Chair, I want to agree because if we make it automatic that after 3 months, then it goes through. The delay or the 3 months period may pass not because of Parliament's error, but because of other things, including unforeseeable circumstances, including maybe even the Treasury itself dragging its feet, postponing meetings, and so on and so forth. So if we make it automatic, I think it is very dangerous, because then what will happen is that, for example, like this budget, if we say that, if we had said that if Parliament does not pass it by the 30th of July, then automatically we have a budget. It can't be like that, Chair. We have to sit and consider it. If Treasury would be dragging its feet now if they knew that by the 30th we will have a budget, number one. Number two, the FFC actually points out in 8.4 that it is concerned about transparency. Now, transparency is a cornerstone of our Constitution. The supreme law of the land is the Constitution, and the spirit of the Constitution, which requires transparency and deliberate action, not automatic administrative actions. And so on the basis of that, it's actually not even Parliament, as you said. The supremacy in South Africa is of the Constitution, not even of Parliament, of the Constitution. So the Constitution requires transparency. The Constitution requires that things must be done properly and deliberately. So I would argue that, in fact, if we make it automatic after 3 months on a matter as grave as this, it may be open to a constitutional challenge. So this thing will come into place even when it has not been approved by Parliament or has not been thoroughly debated and considered. It will just be approved because the time has lapsed. And that is dangerous, Chair.
Honorable Skete.
Thank you, Chair. No, Chair, my question was just, is it not a legislature issue that Parliament can change it, not the Minister? But because if we going to put 3 months and say the Minister, and then it can be a challenge forward. I think it's a legislative issue that Parliament can amend. It's just.
I mean, I think there's a broad principles about what regulations ministers can table. That's part of the dilemma in the lawmaking issue. But I think the point we're arguing, we all agree that a regulation cannot be assumed in place in the absence of Parliament. That point we all agree on. The point that perhaps maybe I sit on is the point that says within the 3 months, Parliament must reach a decision, one way or another. The point that Honorable Bateman and Honorable Molefe are putting forward is to say, you are putting yourself in a situation where Parliament is the last in the leg, therefore it can be manipulated so that you play to the clock, and then when Parliament can't make a decision, that decision is automated. If I put the two positions on the table. The way to synchronize that, I suppose, is then to say a revised provision must be made that a minister cannot just simply table it and it be to be automatic law. Is that the revised position? Because then if I hear what Honorable Bateman is, when I hear what Honorable Molefe is saying, and all of us are saying, fine, 3 months can be a debate neither here nor there, but the point is, let us find a place where ultimately a law can reach the consensus of Parliament regardless, if I could put it like that, because Parliament must ultimately make a decision, so that you can't just say, we've given you 3 months, you did nothing, the law proceeds. Am I getting the sentiment of the committee correct? Makakula, and then I see Honorable Wakelin, and then I think Honorable Mkonto, was your hand up, or did I get it wrong? Let me take on Umakakula and then I'll come back. Sfiso? Your hand was up. Oh, it was not up. I think the expression we are trying to make, whether it's a recommendation, I mean, the recommendation is there. I think the only point is that actually, I can't read what it says there. I haven't been to Sion yet, but it says the point is that Parliament has the ultimate authority in the bill, regardless of, and an amendment must be sought to adjust the timeline as prescribed by National Treasury and must be retabled.
I thought at this time we're still ruminating and discussing thoughts about what to do, but I would want to have an informed position where I can capture this as a recommendation. So I'm not sure if what you are saying...
What I'm saying now
yes.
is the sentiment in this room.
Sure.
The room is saying, the committee is saying, that actually Parliament remains the authority, the ultimate authority in the process, and therefore an amendment must be brought that adjusts the timeline as prescribed in the bill by the minister, so that ultimately Parliament can have the final authority over the bill. That is what the committee is saying. Honorable Wakelin?
Chair, let us just be abundantly clear. We don't want this bill to be stopped. We want it to continue. That's why we're trying to find a compromise. And already you are creating a constitutional dilemma here by allowing one minister to do that. I don't know how many other bills or acts currently actually allow that. I don't think there is, but I'm very young still here, and I'm sure by my first term I'll know. My further concern is 8.3. Let me read it to you. Committee is satisfied with the consistency of Parliament lawmaking process. Parliament reserves its right to scrutinise the decision of the executive without being pressurised for time.
Just a second. Sorry, I'm sorry for that. I'm sorry. Chairperson, I'm not sure if we're done with this because I was still trying to put the...
We're not done yet.
We're not done yet. Okay, no, that's fine.
While also acknowledging the importance of timeless distribution. The point is, once you've acted on this act and this act is approved, doesn't matter what's in this report, it will not stand in court. That's the concern. You're talking about 7.9 billion rand a year, 2 million people's pension funds. We need it clean. We need it to be simple. That's where we are, Chair.
So give me, what I'm asking is, we are all in agreement about the point you are trying to make. I'm just trying to find the exact wording that communicates the fact that Parliament is the authority and a agreement must be reached by Parliament. That's it. And therefore, the subsequent sentence says that an amendment to this must be brought to deal with this question of 3 months without trying to create further delays on this issue. Honorable Molefe. Mashile, just hold on.
Chair, we can't go to South Africa and say we were not happy with this, but we were under time pressure. Exactly what we're trying to avoid now. We are not under any time pressure. We are not concerned about these concerns that you have of the GNU. We say we must do the right thing. And the right thing is to send this thing back to effect that amendment that reflects exactly what we are saying now. If it is the feeling of the committee that this thing should not be automatic, let the bill say so. And if it means it must go back, even if the heaven falls, it doesn't matter. We have to do the right thing. There's too much at stake, and it is the Constitution that demands that we must do the right thing, the supreme law of the land.
I don't disagree. Honorable members, the recommendation says that after 3 months, Parliament must be sought. A decision then is automated post facto. Our committee is saying, actually, it is that within that 3 months, if you stick to the 3 month provision, Parliament has the supreme authority to amend, reject, as for the Money Bills and Related Matters Act. And all I'm making a recommendation is, I don't agree with the view that says send the bill back. I take the view that says the recommendation put in here says that Parliament must exercise a decision within that 3 months. And that in subsequent tabling of similar legislation, that adjustment of 3 months must be done. I think that's what I sense the committee saying. No one is saying the bill in its entirety must go back. That's not the impression I'm getting.
No, we are saying so.
You are saying so. Okay. Then I take your point. So, honorable members, may I make a suggestion that in text, or maybe let me get the text proposal that you had made, Honorable Bateman, about what subsequent amendment must come. Yes?
Honourable Chair, yes, I have just emailed the Secretary with recommendation 9.3 and 9.4. So perhaps if you're able to, through you, Chair, to put that up on the screen, we could then have something in front of us to look at.
Mashilo tlo re bontsha di-email tsa go zo zotlhe ga ke batle go itse.
There's nothing to hide, Chair.
Oh.
Spoke about transparency. I think you've been.
You are subscribing to the transparency dictum.
No, is it this one? Is it this one?
That's the one, yeah. Can you read it, please?
The one in red, eh? Or 9.3? Okay. All right. The committee recommends that the National Treasury and the committee remains vigilant regarding the level of charges to the National Revenue Fund in terms of this bill from year to year to ensure that they remain affordable to the fiscus from year to year and not abused. 9.4. The committee recommends that the minister submits an amendment to the bill which the removal of the 3 month section to subsection 4, which proposes that if Parliament does not pass a resolution approving, adopting amendments to, or rejecting the proposed amendments to the schedule within 3 months from the date of its tabling, Parliament is deemed to have approved the proposed amendments to the schedule. Yeah.
Some of us must translate in our heads as he's reading.
Okay.
Our Remulefe. Not there, not that game. So I love it.
All right.
I didn't hear properly. I just want to understand it thoroughly.
The only thing that I don't get, and you can read again, Mashile, the second part is just when.
Yeah. Okay. I want to. Yeah.
Yes, just read that bit.
Okay. Yeah, I will also try to. Okay. Is that clear now? All right. 9.3. The committee recommends that the National Treasury and the committee remains vigilant regarding the level of charges to the National Revenue Fund in terms of this bill from year to year to ensure that they remain affordable to the fiscus from year to year and are not abused.
That one we agree.
9.4. The committee recommends that the Minister of Finance submits an amendment to the bill which the removal of the 3 months section 2 subsection 4 which proposes that if Parliament does not pass a resolution approving, adopting amendments to or rejecting the proposed amendments to the schedule within 3 months from the date of its tabling, Parliament is deemed to have approved the proposed amendments to the schedule.
That I'm comfortable with. I think that's the sentiment of the committee, and it's correct.
So why can't it be done now?
We are suggesting that it be done for the next bill. I hear you, but we are suggesting that particularly for what the only provision we can make is to say at the tabling of the next shade at the budget in the following financial year. Yeah, correct.
But why not now? Honestly, what stops us from doing it now? Because we agree that that is the right thing to do. So what stops us from doing the right thing?
No, it's not doing the right thing. I think that
I think that pushing it through because we feel obligated because of a time pressure is wrong, Chair.
Chair.
I'm conscious of your concern, Honorable Molefe, but I think this matter, the provision we are debating says we are debating this question of 3 months in some ways, and the point to be made is that to me, I think an amendment can be made and a submission can be made in the next budget cycle. I don't foresee it being as constitutional a crisis as you are putting it forward. I don't foresee it in that manner. Honourable Bateman?
Honourable Chair, I would just submit that the word right means different things in different contexts. I would submit that there's right as in the optimal way for the wording, and there's right as in immoral or morally bad, shall we say. And we're not saying that this is morally bad. We're just saying that it's perhaps not the best wording, and we can change it with an amendment. But what would be morally bad is if pensioners didn't get paid in the month of August because we hadn't passed our budget. That would be morally bad. And I think that's really where the weight of this committee, the weight we're feeling as a committee, which is that we need to make sure that we get the legislation passed and through so that we can have a budget approved. And I think the eyes of the country are on us to some extent to make sure that we do that and do it well. So I think that's why this is something I think which can pass for the next cycle, and we can get it done. In fact, if I'm not mistaken, we even have it within our authority to present an amendment bill ourselves as this committee. So subject to guidance, but I think it lies within our own power to make that amendment within the next cycle if necessary.
We can, and part of the discussions we are going to be having substantively is that there's a lot of things that need to happen in the 2026-2027 budget, 2027 that inner year, outer year conversation. But let me not get ahead of myself because, in part, Honorable Molefe, I'm viewing this process over equally so over a 3-year period. But I don't want to get ahead of this issue, so that we don't end up saying to ourselves, "It's do or die now." Let me take, and I'd like to move from this point because I think it is sufficiently ventilated, and I think the text covers the issue. Honorable Member, Honorable Mkonto.
Your Chair, I'm thinking, Chair, as we are discussing, we are talking about time frames as to in the next budget cycle, that amendment bill must be presented by the minister, but it's not in the recommendation. I don't know, or maybe it's common understanding that in the next budget cycle, when the amendment bill is being submitted, then that clause will be removed.
Or rather to table the bill within the next budget cycle. Can we just put that provision? It's in the second part. It just speaks to the fact that it's within the next budget cycle. Nyabonga, Honorable Mkonto, I think that covers it. Right. With those recommendations on the table, Honorable Molefe and then Bateman.
Chair, gentlemen's agreements make bad law. I mean, the first sentence there says we must rely on the vigilance of the Treasury and the committee. That is bad law. Why don't we write it in such a way? Why don't we have this bill drafted in such a way that we don't have to rely on anybody's vigilance, that we put in checks and balances that make sure that the reliance on somebody's vigilance is not necessary. But not the one that I came forward to read there.
Perhaps?
No, that's...
Yeah. This is the sentence here. Remain vigilant regarding the level of charges to the national revenue. I think naturally a budget, Honorable Molefe, maybe the word vigilance might be the challenge, and maybe I hear what you are saying, but ultimately the spirit with which Honorable Bateman is putting the point before is what this committee's task and duty always is to remain vigilant. Whatever the item is, this is about pension and related matters, but it could very well be about any other charge. So if the word vigilant doesn't express the sentiment of giving parliamentary oversight to the issue, because that's the legal provision that this committee has been given. So I hear what you are saying. I don't myself, I think the word is not doing anyone's favor. It's about ensuring that we are responsible for the fiscus of this country. And perhaps maybe, I can't debate English, but I think there are superior law that covers the issue. Let me, honorable members, I think that, Mashile, if you can read that recommendation, I think we can move from here.
All right. The committee recommends that the minister submits an amendment to the bill which the removal of 3 months section 2 subsection 4 that proposes that, open quotes, if Parliament does not pass a resolution approving, adopting amendments to, or rejecting the proposed amendments to the schedule within 3 months from the date of its tabling, Parliament is deemed to have approved the proposed amendments to the schedule. The committee further recommends that the Minister of Finance must table an amendment in the next budget cycle.
Correct. Correct.
Chair, just the word which on the first line should be with.
With.
Yeah, thank you.
Right, honorable members, I move that
It should be
with.
Okay. With. Thank you, Mr. Baker.
Honorable Molefe.
I just wanted you, Chair, to note our reservations.
I agree. The reservations of the MK party being noted. Can I move that we adopt the 2 paragraphs as we go? Let's move on further down, I think, to the rest of the... You can remove both 10 and about 10.1. Mola. Yes, Mr. Makakul. Okay. Moving right along, Mashile. And that's the conclusion of the report in page 8. Are there any... Honorable Molefe, you'd raised the point earlier, and then we'll close it at this point, yeah? Honorable Molefe?
It's the point that I had raised earlier, Chair, which covers the whole report as to maybe it's my lack of understanding, and maybe just a simple clarification will suffice. Why are we taking the money from the National Revenue Fund and not from the surplus of the GPF? Because the National Revenue Fund is already stretched. We're on a shoestring budget, austerity budget, whereas the GPF is sitting with a huge surplus, running into hundreds of billions. Why don't we take the money there? Why do we choose to take it from the National Revenue Fund?
I just want to help you, Chairperson. Probably, Honorable Mlefe, because probably you are not like always in the committee, I think it will be very difficult for a Chairperson to answer that, because National Treasury briefed the committee in the bill and in its entirety, and then those are the questions. I think generally the choices that have been made could have been well answered by National Treasury when they were briefing the committee. And because honorable members were there, I think now it's very difficult to go back and answer that question of the choices. Why are we not taking it from here? I think National Treasury could have easily answered that question if the honorable member was always in the committee when they present the bill. But now it's too late to answer that.
I hear that, but I think Honorable Molefe also makes what is prudent and what's important for this committee to always never lose track of, which is that regardless of the position National Treasury puts forward, we always have a duty to make sure that the national fiscus retains its own integrity. And so whilst I think it's not for me to defend the executive, I do think the question that Honorable Molefe is putting forward is an important one. But it is an important one, perhaps, for the purposes of this report. The committee itself can ask the question, but it cannot respond to it. It's not, in other words, it is important to state the point that you are making, and I'm not disagreeing with you, Honorable Molefe, in that sense. But I do think tomorrow at the debate, this question must be put forward, and must be put forward by the respective parties as they put it forward, because there's a choice that the executive have made here, which is your point. Your point is you've chosen to go to direct charges rather than using the pension fund. That's a choice. Our committee can only observe the choice and make the point, but it's not for us to respond to the point, to the choice. Honorable Bateman, then Honorable Molefe.
And just to add to that, Chair, I think that's absolutely agree with the fact that it's a good question and the fact that it's a question we can put to the executive. But just for the purposes of this bill, it's not introducing a new expense, because it's just where it is on the budget. So previously it was part of the budget vote 8 under National Treasury, Program 7. Now it's going to be below the line effectively as a direct charge. But it's not that there's now a new expense that's appearing for the fiscus. So is this an area where there could potentially be savings in the future? Well, obviously any expense line can be challenged. But this bill is not creating any new expenses, sure, is what we've been told, and I understand. So this is just a case of, in a sense, it's an administrative
sure
matter about how it's going to be paid, not whether it's going to be paid or what's going to be paid.
Sure. Honorable Molefe.
See, my fear, Chair, of putting it below the line is that we are introducing less transparency. When it was in the National Treasury, they came here, We could ask them questions about it. And now it's going to be, actually, the Treasury, they called it the top slice. Part of the top slice. It assumes the importance of debt service costs and salaries. And I don't know if, okay, I was not there when the debate took place, but that does not mean that this committee cannot answer these questions, because they should have been, the committee should have satisfied itself. At this stage, the committee should be able to answer any question on this matter at this stage of the bill. So I think that the way that what we are doing now is introducing less transparency, and so we are encouraging less transparency as opposed to more transparency. We are moving from a situation where these things were handled more transparently than they will be handled in the future. Which is why I say, rather than putting it below the line, maybe you can take it to the GPF and we'll be satisfied that the board manages it transparently. But putting it below the line, Chair, is introducing something that the Constitution discourages. The Constitution wants us to be transparent.
I do think that in the tabling of amendments and schedules, and every time this matter comes, the committee will process it accordingly. So it's not like it can just remain an executive function and power. I hear your point, Honorable Molefe, and I think that point, I would rather say it must be better debated tomorrow in the House by Parliament in this regard. I think dealing with the bill itself, I think the committee satisfied itself in that regard to deal with the issue. So I'd like to move that we keep the report as has been stated in that manner, and I think I would welcome the debate tomorrow, even inside the House, Honorable Molefe.
But please note our reservations, Chair.
I do note your reservations, Honorable Member. So in the light of that, there being no Mashile, the SABC has gone off already. In the light of that, Honorable Members, I don't think there is any additional adjustments to the respective bill that is, to the report that is before us. Can I then move, given the adjustments that were put forward in total, can we take page 8 in that regard? We've made the adjustments. Can I then put finally, with the objection of MK, the report for the adoption of the committee? Honorable Galaga Mazibuko. Oh, they accept with reservations. Honorable Mlefe, can you put MK's position clearly so that I don't miscommunicate it?
We call for division.
A division being called, there's no division here. You arrive here on day one and you are already calling for divisions. Where is this in the Constitution, Honorable Molefe? But, Honorable Members, I think I want to move for the adoption of the report as this particular matter, because I think it's been sufficiently debated. Is there a member who will move for the adoption of the report? I think Honorable Siete. And then seconded by Honorable Galaga Mazibuko.
With the amendments made.
With the amendments that have been made, with the reservations of MK.
No, we reject it, Chair.
Oh, you will reject it.
We will reject it too.
That's 100%. That's with the rejection of MK, let me just...
But I'm interested to know, does everybody accept it?
Honorable Molefe, you can discuss that with them. You have stated, and I've given members an opportunity to do so. If your interests are not satisfied, speak to the respective members. Honorable members, I will then, with the report as has been tabled now, will take it as adopted by the committee. May I request Honorable Magakula to clean up this task so that we can go from there. With that in mind, Honorable members, we will then move over to the next part. May I give members a 10-minute break, and then we recall and begin, if we can reconvene here at 11:45. Context to it is, and that this is the third version of the issue, is a separate matter relative to saying that it is tagged, we're dealing with a particular bill on a particular time. I hear you, and perhaps maybe the inference is there in the sense of timelines, but I think this is tagged in a way. Proceeding then, in the absence of any inputs, page 2. Page 3. Honorable Molefe.
Chair, the issue that is being made there, that 70% of budgets, in some cases,
Please specify. Oh yeah, I see paragraph 2, so that we know we are reading the same thing.
see the last paragraph of page 2 that goes on to page 3.
Yes, I see that. Thank you.
Yeah, and a similar point is made about local government as well. That 70%. So with local government is that 70% of its revenue comes from intergovernmental transfers, and with provinces is that 70% of its expenditure goes to salaries.
Honorable, if can you speak into the microphone? Even I'm struggling to hear you. Yeah.
With provinces, the report says 70% of the budget goes to salaries in certain provinces. And then with local government, it says 70% of the revenue in some municipalities, 70% of the revenue is from intergovernmental transfers, which means that they're not sustainable. But also, if 70% of your salaries in the budget goes to, of 70% of the budget goes to salaries, there is very little left for capex. And so I don't know where we raise that as a concern. If we were in a meeting of auditors, I would say it's a going concern issue, that these things are not it's not sustainable. So these points are being made here, and that's why I'm raising it here. But I think as the committee, maybe later on, we can make an observation to say that this is untenable.
Honorable Molefe, this is just painting the background. There are recommendations that speak to exactly the point you are raising. Fiscal sustainability of provinces, municipalities. You will read as you go through the report, there are inputs done by SALGA that challenge even notionally this idea of 90-10. That debate, this is just merely painting the background. It will then find its expression.
Yeah, I just want us to flag it so that I just want us to double check that that point is made.
It is. Get like bua jaaka moruti. Re santsane re le go Genesis. Leta ya go Revelation e tla. Honorable Wakelin.
Thank you, Chair. If you can just bear with me on page 3, the first paragraph. Let me just give context before I tell you what I'd like to see change. The context is the impression you get when you read it. It's not the local government's fault that they are in that position. I'm saying to you there's a number of issues that was raised by the AG on numerous reports and a number of other committees. And I would like to emphasize those points. And let me continue. Let me just use one example. So after the matter of capital project due to weak capacity, do you see that, Chair?
Paragraph, we're on page 3 now.
Yeah, page 3. Furthermore, government acknowledged that underspending on capital projects due to weak capacity. What I want to insert here is weak project management compliance and non-adherence of procurement processes further hampers service delivery. If we just emphasize weak capacity as a reason for not delivering, that's not true.
I hear you, Honourable Member. This comes from the background of the tabling of the budget. So can I suggest that that recommendation about capacity, and you make 2 points. It's project management and?
Weak project management compliance.
weak project management compliance
And
as it emanates from the Auditor General's report. Is that correct?
That's right.
So may I recommend that that point be captured when we discuss a recommendation on local government as an input from the committee?
Sure. Okay. I just want to get to the point that when people read this, that just not thinking the poor old souls, they are not complying because they are struggling. There's a number of other issues that we are not emphasizing, and this committee made very strong emphasis on them not complying and not good corporate governance. And similarly, if I may continue with the next paragraph,
Okay.
where we say increase the financing and delivery of infrastructure and improve the delivery of service and facilitate and support good corporate governance. If I could add that here or in a recommendation. We just need to get to a point that we be a balanced view, because we are trying to say that it's not. You get my point.
I hear you. I hear you. And I think, to me, I think it's a what you are saying is a finding. It is a finding. You are saying it's not just a matter of capacity. It is a matter of project management. It is a finding. And so you will hear there's a discussion about Mangaung. You'll hear there's a discussion about, as you read the document. I'm more persuaded by the strength of the point as it speaks to findings rather than in the background. And I'd like to make it there strongly because the committee is concerned about this issue, is why we had municipalities come here. Sfiso? You had your hand up.
Yeah, I wanted to support what you are saying, because on the background, this is the information that is contained in the budget review. That's why you were saying government acknowledges, because we take it directly from
the budget,
what National Treasury has presented in the budget review. But your point, it's a very good point, and I will support that we put it on the findings, because this background generally it's factual information which is in the report.
Of course, and I think, what I'm trying to also help us do is so that if somebody were to read it and then wake up and said, "Hey, National Treasury never said this," or the minister never said that, this comes as a background from them. I must hear their story. You see. Let's keep going. Page 4. Yes, Honourable Wakeling.
On the first paragraph, the matter
Top of page 4, page 5.
Sorry, it's my page 4 that talks to SARS. Yeah, exactly that one. We've given SARS a lot of money, and we're giving them more. And by the own admittance of the Commissioner, I would like to put in the policy measures will be reassessed given the commitment by SARS. Additional revenue through more efficient tax administration, high tax compliance, due to an increase of budget allocation to SARS. Chair, the point I want to emphasize, or the emphasis point here for me is we need to keep the SARS Commissioner committed to his on the 20 billion or the 18 billion that we need. He agreed to that, saying, if you give me this, I will give you that. And we are not saying it here. And I want us to be clear on that matter.
Okay. Can you draft a sentence, because it will be carried later? Again, it's not. It's a bit like early in a film. If I could put it like that, it's earlier. This is just background. That's what the minister says. I must give what the minister says. As you read the report, you are reading it from saying, okay, these people are responding to these questions put by someone else. You follow what I mean? So let's allow the plot to thicken.
I just want to make sure that the SARS Commissioner is committed.
The SARS Commissioner must be held accountable, and so that point mustn't be lost. It will be bolstered at the end. Are you with me? Great. Page 5. is this Mashile, where are you now? Oh, or the table. I don't like looking at tables nowadays because chiefs are not top of it, so I move quickly when I see tables. Page 6. You have to look very hard to find chiefs on the table, Honorable Khanya. You have to keep searching. We are still there. Page 7. Page 8. Can I just make it? It's a textual point. It's captured in brackets there, budget 3.0. Whilst I made the point about how the bill is tagged up there, if you are going to version it as version 3.0, it might just help with a line that says this is the third iteration in this instance of the Division of Revenue bill. Otherwise, if you put it in brackets as 3.0, I'm well entitled to ask you one day when I'm 90. And it's like, what do you mean by 3.0?
Yeah, it's actually not an official.
It's not. It's political comment. Honorable Moleve?
And strictly speaking, there's no 3.0.
Correct.
Because this is the budget. It's not a version of another one.
Correct. So if we can remove these, you can make it as commentary. Page 8. And then page 9. Page 10. Page 11. Page 12. Page 13. Page 14. Page 15. Awa lahlega. Page 16. Page 17. Page 18. Page 19. Page 20. You know, my pages and your pages are not the same, but I suppose. Now let's move to page 21. page 22. Mashile, just slow down a little bit. I want to make sure we are all on the same WhatsApp group here.
Chair, are you sure that you're using the revised version? Because, okay, yeah. As long as the content is fine, then we will catch up then.
Sure.
Sure.
Page 23. Page 24. Yeah, I'm on the PBO, page 25. Right. Now we get to page 26. In reading this, it disturbed my sleep permanently, to quote Honorable Lekhanyan. No, it's true. It genuinely is true. I think in that point, I hope we will capture strongly and fight hard for it. Because, page 27. Page 28.
Sorry, Chair.
Yes.
Before we proceed, right? I think it was explained in the communication that was sent through to honorable members and colleagues, right? To say that the first version has been reworked without necessarily changing the content. So what I've done in here, the one that is in the first paragraph that is highlighted in yellow is exactly what is being said in the second paragraph. It is the same thing. The only change is the phrasing. So moving forward, it means that if we agree on the changes just to bring about coherence and understanding of the content and the meaning and the flow of ideas. So if we move forward, it means that I'm going to delete the second paragraph because it's the same thing, but put differently.
Maybe read the paragraph.
Okay. Okay. Salga submitted that government should pay attention to key expenditure drivers with specific focus on spending efficiency, budget cuts, compliance and delivery impact on conditional grants. Furthermore, Salga made such submissions that budget cost on government an estimated amount of 43 billion due to bloated staff, 5 to 25 billion due to ghost employees, combined factors on quality of services, fruitless and wasteful expenditure at the tune of 10.34 billion, and municipalities at the tune of 7.31 billion. Right. The original one is the one below.
The use of the word tune. Tune is a colloquial term. It's either to some extent, it's to the extent of something, not. Okay. Tune is language that is.
The extent of, like this. Yeah. Yes. Yeah, should I read the second one, then the second version? Okay. On government key expenditure drivers, Salga submitted that expenditure efficiency cuts, compliance and delivery impacts, which are areas that government should look into, particularly with conditional grants expenditure. Furthermore, according to Salga, inefficiencies cost the government an estimated incurred bloated staff cost of 34 billion, ghost employers 5 to 25 billion, quality of services and fruitless and wasteful expenditure in brackets, government 10.34 billion and municipalities 7.31 billion over a period. These are two versions, like as I explained. Yes. When we reworked on that one, we looked at the coherence and the flow of ideas, and some of the sentences would be jetty and hanging. So after we had invited for comments from members to have an input, one or two would pick up a few issues, and this is one of the things that was brought to our attention. So that we had to rework on that one, so that when somebody reads this, they would not be finding ideas hanging and sentence would not be linking in terms of the line of thought and the theme of understanding what the content is there in the report.
Honorable Talaga Mazubu.
Okay, I hear Mr. Mashile, but on the corrected version, I'm trying to check where is the cost of the cost incurred on bloated staff, the 34 billion. Where is it reflected on the amended version?
Let's just check. Right. If you look at the 1, 2, 3, 4, the fifth line, there's a comma and then the 5 to 25 billion due to ghost employees and combined factors on quality. That is a combination of that one. In other words, it was dovetailed into that.
So you combined.
Yeah, in order to limit the chances of redundancy and regurgitation of the same ideas. Yes.
No, sorry, Chair. Maybe Mr. Mashila must explain, because at the one at the bottom it talked about 34 billion and at the top talk about 43 billion. Okay. Yeah, maybe that's the.
I think I'm persuaded by Honorable Kalaga Mazibugo's point about delineating the difference between bloated staff and ghosted employees, because the issue of ghosted employees is thematic throughout. And I think that it cannot, whilst I think the first paragraph, the one highlighted in yellow, reads better, I certainly do think that the delineation is important. Otherwise, you will lose certain aspects. So you delineate it as per the second paragraph in this regard. Honorable Khanyan.
Yeah, Chair, no, thank you so much. I think one other point that that must be clarified on the cost of bloated staff. When we say the cost of bloated staff, do we mean all people that have been employed? Or at what point do we say the staff is bloated? Because you may need to do a segmentation. My understanding is that if you say a staff is bloated, is that if you had to employ 20 people, maybe you employed 45. And then the 25 will make you bloated. If we calculate the costs and we bring them together into one segment or into one basket and say this is the cost of bloated staff, it may create a problem in terms of meaning or the message that we want to put across. So if we can have a segmentation there, like the Chair, Honorable Mazibuko say, on the ghosted employees, and also sitting somewhere, if I need to have an understanding what are the employee costs without bloating? Because in any event, employee costs are inevitable. There must be employee costs because there must be people to run an institution to help you to deliver the services that you want. But a bloated system can also present its own challenges. And that is why I'm asking the question, at what point? It may be because we are unable to put it or to frame it the way we want, because it's not our statement, Chair, it's a SALGA statement. And maybe SALGA was the one who was supposed to have said, we are supposed to be having X number of employees, but unfortunately, this is the number that we have. Where, for instance, a mayor will have 12 people appointed in his or her office, when that mayor was supposed to have 2 or 3 people. And that is where the bloating comes from. But the way it is put there, I don't know, but my understanding is that it also includes people who are legitimately employed. And we report all of that as the cost of a bloated staff. Each and every municipality must have a municipal manager and a CFO. We can't include the CFO and the municipal manager to be part of the bloated staff. They must have that. They must have such appointments. So
I do think Honorable Lekhanyane's point, the 43 billion isn't the expression of the cost of employees in total in my reading. Keeping in mind that the sphere of local government, in essence, if it is consuming for in its total fiscus, I think about a city like Johannesburg that is 70 billion rands, etc. Local government's budget in total of all the municipalities is not, and if 70% is not 70% of that figure is not 43 billion. Therefore, the bloating is of 43 billion, if I follow what I mean. So I would express it to say that, so where it says there, at an estimated amount of 43 billion, etc., that is where the bloating begins to take on your earlier point, given the fact that naturally municipalities across the country's budgets are higher than that. So it begins there, and then you add the points about the ghost workers additional to the issue. And so if the sentence is that the cost of government is, it's not the cost of government, it's the bloated component of the issue. Because if the police budget, let's assume it's 100 rands, and 81% of the police budget is cost of employees, so it's 81 rands. If I then make the point that in the 81 rands, whatever, actually it's now 90 rands that they are spending, the 9 rands is the bloated bit.
And you still have additional 7 rand for ghost employees.
Correct. So the point there says 34 billion rands is the point of bloating, which means I can work backwards from there and assume a different cost of employees. That's not what the cost of employees is. I think the 43 is the bloating. It's like my doctor says to me, Chief, you should be weighing X. You weigh Y. The bloating is the difference between the two.
And we don't include the heavy jacket that you...
Correct, yes. Yes.
So based on the deliberations at the moment, can we, I'm not really sure because the original question emanates from what Honorable Kaleka Masibuko said, to say that where did we drop the 34 billion? So can we transpose and take the 34 billion and replace the 43, which of course, if we take the 43 billion, it will be a misrepresentation of the real figures. That is why Honorable Maimane says there must be separation, there must be specificity in terms of the issues that are raised in here. So if you look at the correction, the adjustment that would have been made there, can we go with that adjustment to say that the 34 is placed there?
So read the entire sentence so that we
Right.
can go from there.
All right. Salga submitted that government should pay attention to key expenditure drivers with specific focus on spending efficiency, budget cuts, compliance and delivery impact on conditional grants. Furthermore, Salga made submission that budget cost on government and estimated, okay, let me put a comma there after government, an estimated amount of 34 billion due to bloated staff, 5 to 25 billion due to ghost employees, combined factors on quality of services, fruitless and wasteful expenditure to the extent of 10.34 billion, and municipalities at the tune will replace that one at the tune of 7.31 billion. I'm not sure if it answers our.
To the extent of. Honorable Lekhanyan.
I think this is what now becomes a misrepresentation. Because once we reduce from a higher amount to a lower amount, there must be an explanation why there is a reduction. Yes, look, the point here is not to be. It's not. What do we do? What do we call that? Spin doctoring. Yeah.
Yes.
The point is not to spin doctor. If there is an amount of 43 billion that is being spent collectively on all the aspects, that amount must be reported, but then it must be broken down to say, out of the 43 billion that is spent on employee costs, there is 34% that is spent on the cost that ordinarily would have been incurred, and there is a 9 billion that is spent on a bloated component of the staff, and there is 7 billion that is spent on ghost employees. And all in all, I mean, all of it combined, this is what it gives us. But if now there was 43 billion in the report, and after our discussion, the 43 billion disappears, it's 34 billion. How do we go out and explain it to, how did we reduce from 43 to 34? All the three components there have to be accounted, because we must know where are we in local government. We must know if there are bottomless pits, where the money is falling into, and how do we retrieve that money. But I mean, to spin doctor will become a problem.
Makakula, and then I recognize Honorable Kalaga Mazibuko. I'll come to you. I just want to finish this point.
Honorable Kanyan, it's just that Mashile doesn't explain this thing. The 43 and the 34, it's a simple mistake. He wrote 43 instead of 34. So there is no issue there. The correct number is 34. All right. On the breaking down, as you are saying, unfortunately, we cannot break it down ourselves, because that's what we got from Salga. So it's a Salga figure. So we don't have to assume what they are saying. We are writing what they have said.
Okay. Honorable Kalaga Mazibuko.
I'm covered on the 34 and the 43. And I know the people from that province, they got the numbers. The 34 becomes 45.
But I think for the integrity of the report, and the integrity of the work that we do, please just make sure that Salga sign off on the fact that it is 34. And we must just triple check that, because I wouldn't want to A, misrepresent them, and B, have Salga begin to challenge what is tabled in a report that they submitted.
Chairperson, get it from me. It's just that when Mashile was doing like the the rechecking on the yellow thing. That's where the mistake. That's when he made the mistake.
If it's
I'm
just
the
a,
one
if it's
who
just a
wrote it.
clerical error, it's fine.
Yes.
But let's just make sure that it is completely accurate as a brief.
Mashile must be vigilant, Chair.
Nori?
Say he must be vigilant.
Yes, that's the word. That's where the word vigilance comes in. You see,
Be a deadly mistake if we had gone with this.
10 billion rands is not a minor clerical error. That's what NYDA does. Anyways,
Otherwise, we'll issue an intelligence report.
yes, that's how people move organizations. Page 29 is where I'm at. Mashile, let's. If we agree on that view, you can remove the next paragraph because I think it's captured by the first.
By the way, Chair, the difference between 43 and 34 is 9 billion, not 10. So you're also taking an extra billion there.
Yes. Ramule, there must always be an adjustment here or there. It's what's called rounding up. Yes. You know, ow. Come on, so you'll be calling it leakage. It's not. It's just rounding up here and there. Yeah, Vikinyana. Let's keep going. We are now on page, Mashile, page 29, 27. There are new adjustments there. Can you highlight those? Please read that section.
On debt and debt service costs, SALGA submitted that the South African government has serious debt challenges. It unpacked the foregoing debt challenge by explaining to the committee that government's debt to GDP is at 77.4%, which translates to an amount of 6.6 trillion, municipal debt at 346 billion. It indicated the debt comprises of 346 billion for both creditors and 106 billion for debtors. It should be for debtors. Let's look in. We'll confirm. I think I'm with CISO in here. We can look into that. I think it was creditors and debtors. Yeah.
I happen to think the higher amount is to creditors, but just make sure you get the right sequences.
For debtors.
Because what Salga was saying in the meeting was that there are people who owe municipalities money and there are people whom the municipality owes money to.
Yes.
But let's make sure we get the figures for each one correct. Okay, keep going.
Yeah. Household debt to income ratio is estimated at 65%, with some consumers are spending up to 75 to 80% of their income on debt repayment. Regarding economic growth, SALGA submitted that there is an urgent need for a government's integrated economic growth strategy addressing inefficiencies, spending on infrastructure, stringent debt and expenditure management. Yes, there we are for now.
Yeah, I think I'm happy with that myself. I don't know if there are any members who... Honorable Kalaga Mazibu.
Yes, as much as I'm happy with that, but there is an R who's not supposed to be there unless you add the word who. After the 65% comma, with some consumers spending up to 70 to 80%. Or you must say with some consumers who are spending. There's some grammatic there.
Mm-hmm.
There's a comma, so.
Who? That's fine.
Can we say who spend, or can we say who are spend? It's fine.
No, it's right like that.
It's fine.
Keep going. No, we've covered that.
On local government equitable share, SALGA submitted that.
No, Mashile. That is not the repeat. That second paragraph is a different one
that's
to
fine.
that one.
That's fine. Okay. Keep going.
Keep going to the one below here.
Right.
That I want to get to.
Okay.
Mashile, please start at the
At the
top
top.
there so we can
Just
read
here.
it as a paragraph.
On municipal debt relief. Should I read that one?
Yes.
All right. On municipal debt relief program, Salga submitted that it acknowledges that the money owed by municipalities on the program has increased by 24.7 billion to 80 billion from March 2023 to February 2024. However, conditions of the program have been reduced to focus on non-payment of current account of ESCOM. According to Salga, National Treasury and ESCOM proposed a delivery agency agreement, DDA, to improve electricity service delivery and financial stability by addressing issues like non-payment of electricity bill and poor infrastructure. Salga proposes that the DAA should follow the Municipal Systems Act 78 process to empower both municipalities and ESCOM with a holistic overview to current conditions within municipalities. The DDA conditions should be fair and beneficial for ESCOM and communities.
Is it DDA or DAA?
It's DAA.
DAA. Yeah. It's always good to have two-eyed people, like instead of having one-eyed person in the whole community. Yes.
We can't discuss the historical legacy of the Northwest education system here. Let's keep going.
Okay, so we're going to the next page. In conclusion, Salga cautioned against
That is in concussions. Or
in conclusion. I took it from Sfiso. In concussion, yeah. Yes. In conclusion. Oh, in conclusion, again.
The L must be.
Yeah. Okay, let me restart.
Now you are moving into Western words, in collusion.
Yes. Okay, yeah. Okay. Let's look into that. In conclusion. Right. In conclusion, Salga cautioned against the overstating of the economic growth rates because structural reforms commitment often take time to implement by the National Treasury. I'm not really sure, Sfiso, I just wanted to get clarity in here. Oh, yes.
You must put in that off.
Where's the off? Salga cautioned against the overstating. Of the economic growth rates because structural reforms commitment often take time to implement. Okay, yeah. The reason I highlighted this in gray, I thought this should be removed, and then the sentence stops at implement. Right. Right. So the next sentence will start by Salga also, and then we remove the gray one, the great one, if we agree on that. Sfiso, I will also invite you. So, yes.
So you also removing.
I wouldn't remove just this bit here that speaks about considering National Treasury's downward projections. So what I would rather, Mashile,
yes,
this paragraph needs a little bit of work. So in conclusion,
yes,
Salga cautioned against the overstating of the economic growth rates because of structural reforms commitment often take time to implement.
Yes.
And then you can leave that, you can skip that next line, put a parenthesis that says, considering National Treasury's downward projection of South Africa's real economic growth, and close paragraph.
Okay.
Because that's just parenthesis. It's not part of the earlier sentence.
Yeah, considering what?
And then it says, Salga calls for the review of the macroeconomic strategy. That bit is fine.
National Treasuries.
No, Mashile, it's already there.
It's there. Yeah. Okay. 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 What do we do? Okay, then I remove this one. Right. In brackets, right? Yes.
You've got it, Mashile?
Yeah. Yeah.
What I will also say is, yeah, tswella pele Mra, so that
This one. No, it cannot be. All right. All right. We'll come back to that. Salga. Do we start with the C? Okay. All right. Salga also calls for the review of macroeconomic strategy and that it should be inclusive and participative across all spheres of government, business and communities. Salga notes government's effort, support and logic to prioritize metros to be sustainable. However, there is unintended consequences to neglecting the secondary cities and rural municipalities, which can drive out investment and increase migration. Salga also expressed its Okay.
Honorable Mulefe.
It says Salga rejected the National Treasury's use of outdated data. I think the data that they used was 2011. Data. But here, I don't know what we're trying to sanitize here, but we're saying it's not census 2022. It's correct, but you should say that they used 2011.
Correct.
Where is it?
As Honorable Kanyane has said, we don't put things that they've not said. We're just taking what they've said in the presentation. We don't add anything otherwise.
From Salga's
Yes.
point of view.
We're just taking only what they said. What they've not said.
Not 2022.
Yes, that's what they say in the
No, they said 20. Yeah. Well, if
Was not used.
Yes.
No. 2022 was not used. They did not say what was used.
in their presentation.
Well, Chairperson, the challenge is that, Honorable, I can hear where you are coming from, but the challenge is that when you are writing from a presentation, they don't necessarily, they didn't even submit a document, but it's a presentation. So now from the slides, we're writing that. Probably they have said that when they were talking, but not on the slide itself.
On their submissions.
On their submissions.
Yeah, but then the outdated data that they used was 2011. You agree? Yeah, even if they didn't say it, that is what happened.
So let me do this. I'm going to suspend this point. The woman from the lady who made the submission, Yasalga, if we can just check, because this report has to stand for public scrutiny. And at lunchtime, I'm really comfortable. We can, Mashile, we can get somebody just to give her a call, just to confirm what data was used for the purposes of this report. I think that's it. It's a year in specificity. I think the point is taken. I would rather have it from the horse's mouth than from any speculation. But let's keep going. We park this point. Mashila, please note that this point is parked and then it will be finalized right at the end. I'm just making a note here on the Salga point. We can keep going. You are now on page 28, Mashila.
I think Salga believes in order to address the inefficiencies, there should be intergovernmental collaborations, streamlining and enabling policies, impactful and differentiated support across all spheres of government, across all three spheres of government.
That's fine.
Yeah. Okay, we'll believe that. Right.
Page 28. Page 29. Page 30. Page 31. This is just Johannesburg. Page 32. Page 33. Page 34. Page 35. Page 36. Page 37. Page 38. Page 39. It's like mathematics. Page 40. Now, page 41. We start with findings and observations. Right. Let's go. Page 41. Can you go to the end of that page? Remember, starting there. Inputs from any member. Page 41. Page 42. Honorable Bateman, Honorable Wakely.
Okay.
I didn't go very quick.
Thanks, Chair. Sorry, I've been
Soon
I've
you're going to start
subconsciously
saying
been
things
listening
like
for.
you were on mute.
I've been subconsciously listening for the number 41, and when I heard 41, it was just the ears pricked up. We on to recommendations and observations.
Yes.
Okay. 10.1. I had a number of suggested changes for that, and some of these relate to wording and grammar, and some of them are relate more to substance. So, but they're all sort of mixed in. I'll read from the top. Well, first sentence of 10.1, fine. Second sentence, fine. Then the third sentence, the committee is of the view that government needs to widen. It says that it's revenue resource base. I just thought maybe just to clarify that just as being the tax base, if that's what is meant by that. Mm-hmm. In order to fund its spending pressures. The committee is of the view that rather than taxing the existing tax base more heavily, the government must consider investing more resources to curb tax evasion and non-payment of tax debts and explore other tax sources like online gambling and illicit financial flows. Mm-hmm. To this end, the committee supports the additional investments in SARS and the government spending reviews that will ultimately, rather than untimely, unlock additional resources. So it's not necessarily going to unlock revenue, because a spending review could, but it will unlock resources for government, as opposed to constant increases in the various tax regimes, potentially running the risk of adversely impacting the poor citizens. And then I'd add this, as well as reducing investment, economic growth, and job creation.
Mm-hmm.
That's 10.1.
The point you're trying to make is that, okay, that's fine. I will read it in toto in a moment. Yes, Honorable Bateman, let's just stick to this paragraph so that we finish it. Yes, okay. You were saying? Are you done?
I've done on 10.1, yes.
Okay, thanks. You. Honorable Molefe.
Chair, the issue here is that firstly, I think that we must, so there's no budget 2.0, we're talking about this budget, number one. Number two, that the fuel levy, which was used to replace VAT, is equally regressive. It is inflationary. It dampens consumption expenditure. it is anti-poor, it is anti-growth. And it is very similar to VAT, because VAT also ticks those boxes. So we don't really understand what the government was doing here by replacing, or the minister was doing by replacing VAT with a fuel levy, because they are equally dangerous, or they are equally regressive and counterproductive. But the minister shied away from taxing the rich. I know that there is an argument that the rich are already overtaxed, but we are of the view that the minister should not run away from taxing wealth that was accumulated over the years in South Africa at the expense of the labor of others. And so we think that more progressive tax instruments must be found that tax the wealthy more than they tax the poor. At the moment, the fuel levy taxes the poor more than it taxes the rich as a percentage of their income, if you think about it. So if we both have to pay 10 rand on a 1 liter of petrol as a fuel levy, 10 rand for me as a person who earns 100 rand is 10% of my income. But for a person who earns 1 million, it's minuscule. So it's regressive. It taxes the poor more. Mm-hmm. So I think that point should come out, that what the minister did by jumping to the fuel levy actually was not, it may even have been jumping from the frying pan into the fire. And that is our considered opinion.
Okay. Let me hear from other members, and we'll take the point. We are now discussing exclusively the point about the fuel levy and the amendments to 10.1. Honorable Mkhonto.
When discussing the pensions fund bill, it was explained as to COSATU as a stakeholder, what they presented to the committee. But surprisingly, with this bill, those who participated are mentioned, but it is not explained as to what did they say specifically about the fuel levy, because they did say something about the fuel levy. So I think it will be proper if it can be put in this report what those who participated, what did they say about the fuel levy. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. So there are 2 points that we are dealing with currently, honorable members. It speaks to the point made at 10.1 about the removal of VAT. What Honorable Molefe's argument is that that has been merely substituted by a more regressive tax in the fuel levy. What Honorable Mkhonto is saying is that actually there was a submission by other entities as it pertains narrowly to the question of the fuel levy, COSATU being one. So those are the 2 points on the table. I just note them, and then we'll work on a way forward in how do we address the 2 questions on the table. Honorable Wakelin or Bateman, I'm not sure which, and this is not to suggest any. Honorable Wakelin?
Chair, we are brothers in arms.
No, all I wanted to say is that I would never be one to suggest that white people look the same.
Hey, Batu. Anyway.
Point of order.
Chair, the last part of 10.1 refers to 2 matters which we actually would like to extrapolate on. The first one is a very simple one, where we look at the SARS. We said to this end, the committee supports the additional investment in SARS, and then that's where we stop. But I would like to include and the commitment by the SARS Commissioner to raise the extra 20 billion in revenue required for the 2026 budget. Because
and that the SARS Commissioner must be held accountable to that.
yes, if we can put it in there. And
So,
then,
Mashile, just wait, hold on. Honorable Wakelin, now,
yeah.
because we are doing three things now.
yeah, that's it. This is an easy one.
I'm starting to worry that it's a bit like the army. You can't ask us to do more than three. So let me hold off on the last point because I don't think there's contention on the issue. Let me move to the first two that were on the floor. Yeah, don't add another one onto the first two. On the first two, Honorable Molefe raises the point about the regressive nature of the fuel levy. This was equally so a submission by the PBO, if I'm not mistaken, in the point. Therefore, I think it would be amiss of us not to note that point. Whilst the removal of VAT as a regressive tax is noted, the fuel levy as a substitute is also burdensome on poor citizens. And it also has an economic multiplier in and of itself. I think the point must be made, and it must be supplemented in 10.1 by saying that obviously the committee notes with concern the introduction of the fuel levy. And of course, there are submissions by members of the public who made the same concerns. We are amiss of us not to represent their views. Honorable Bateman, Honorable Wakelin, let's have one meeting. So what were you? Yes, Honorable Bateman.
Thanks, Honourable Chair. I think, I'm just going to give my personal perspective on this one, right? Which is, you sometimes have to you sometimes have small losses in the face of big wins, and VAT is a big win. By comparison, to push up to have pushed back on the increase of a VAT rate of 2% is enormous. The fuel levy wouldn't actually be even in the news were it not for the fact that it had been frozen for 3 years, and between budgets 1, 2, and 3, there was an increase that was introduced, which was actually not a very big increase relative to the size of the fuel levy. It's only actually an inflation adjustment. So in real terms, there actually hasn't been an increase in the fuel levy. There's actually it's just held parity with what it was before. But it's a lot of political capital has been made out of it, which is actually not justified. I think that's the big picture context. For 3 years, it was held constant, which was a way to try and undo some of the regressive effects of the tax, which was great. We weren't able to, or the government was not able to deliver that benefit again this time round, in the context of very tricky circumstances of having to balance a budget without the 2% VAT increase. So I think I'm not trying to take anything away from the sort of underlying point, but I also don't think it must be made into a bigger point than what it is in the context.
Honorable Mwali.
Thank you so much, Chairperson. Maybe just to stress the gravity of the regressiveness of this option that was taken by the minister, moving from VAT to fuel levy. The status also emphasized the fact that more than 2/3 of the households in the lowest income quintile spend over 20% on their monthly income on public transport. So, Chair, this is hampering hard on the lowest income of this country. So, really, this is very deep. And we will not then count as this committee as a win to say moving from VAT to fuel levy was a win. Because, and also supported by the sentiments shared by most of the public submissions that we got. They specifically mentioned that this is a regressive tax. And it would be bizarre to not see it on our report mentioned that it is regressive, because it is regressive. Thank you.
Honorable Mulefe, and then Bateman and Honorable Siat, is your hand up? Or I don't want to. Yes?
Yeah, the other strange thing about this fuel levy issue is that I think it raises about, is it 4.1 billion that it will raise? Huh? 4 billion that it raised from the fuel levy. The budget is 2 trillion. How do you balance, or how do you add, or how do you plug a hole of by 4 billion rand in a 2 trillion budget by taking the 4 billion from the poor? So, I mean, the budget is so big that 4 billion really is minuscule, is nothing compared to the total budget. But then what doesn't make sense to us is, why does the fuel levy become such a big thing that has to be done now? Take that money in a regressive tax from the poor, inflationary, counter anti-growth, and so on and so forth. Why do you have to resort to such a measure just for 4 billion out of 2 trillion? It really, Chair, I think maybe it is worth mentioning that it doesn't make sense.
Honorable Wakelin, then Mkhonto.
Thank you, Chair. I hear the sentiment, but I want to just speak to the facts. I'm just going to go look quickly. The fuel levy will actually just take out 3 billion out of the economy. And the fuel price is still 120 cheaper than last year, is what it was. The VAT would have taken out 16 billion out of the economy. And it's within that discussion that we need to try to find each other. These are the actual facts, because I'm concerned when we start because you're not comparing apples with apples here. You're comparing apples with a pear. So let's just be clear on the matter. And I hear it is an emotional issue. But here's the reality. It is cheaper than it was last year. And on the point of Honourable Bateman, there was no adjustment done for the last 3 years on it. Thank you, Chair.
Honourable Mkhonto.
Chair, I want to go back to what I presented.
Honourable Mkhonto, can I ask you to use the microphone?
Okay. Can I go back to what I presented, and Honourable Mwale was alluding to it? We can't change because we are seated here, now we understand each other. Maybe then we change what was presented by the public. It can't be. We must put what was presented by the public as is. We can't misrepresent their facts. As Mr. Makakula was saying, Salga said it like this, I can't change it. So even in this case, Chair, the public presented the fuel levy as a regressive tax. Let us put it like that. We can't change what they have said. And to further explain, Chair, there are people, when they want services from the Department of Home Affairs, the Department of Social Development, a clinic, chain stores, whatever, they have to travel. They can't walk. Maybe some of us, we are privileged that we are having these services at our doorstep, and we don't imagine how some people have to travel a few tens of kilometers for them to access basic government services. So it becomes a burden to them. We can't say the fuel tax is something small, because we are comparing it to the VAT. No. How does it become a burden to a person who is staying at Mkanduli, to a person who is staying at Bedville, to a person who is staying at Tomo, to a person who is staying at Dludluma? That is what we must talk about, not compare it with VAT. Thank you.
Honorable members, can I make a recommendation here? Firstly, I think it would be amiss of us as a committee to be silent on the fuel levy. Therefore, it must be stated that the committee notes the increase in the fuel levy. And correctly, I think the committee has the right to raise the concern about its impact on households. Because we are having two discussions. At a macroeconomic and fiscal level, others would argue that 4 billion in a 2.1 trillion rands budget is insignificant, and there's a macroeconomic argument that can be made for that. I am not persuaded by the argument that it's been left alone for the last 3 years, therefore it must. Because if you keep the same argument, you could say, well, VAT was left alone for the last 3 years, therefore it should. But what I am also wanting to say is that, of course, as a committee, we have heard submissions from the people of this country as it pertains to this issue of the fuel levy. But I don't think the point, and then what I would do, the other submissions that were made, because this matter has been sufficiently ventilated in court, I do think that it must be noted the fact that a review of the fuel price must not, now becomes even more urgent. Because you will recall there was an extensive discussion about where it sits in its review. Because whilst Honorable Wakelin says it's been in, the current fuel price is a rand cheaper than what it was, the calculation and the formula thereof still means that government tax of the issue doesn't always sufficiently adjust for whether consumers receive relief when, for example, the fuel price goes down. And I can recall in the first engagements with Treasury, a discussion being raised about how this compares to neighboring countries, Botswana, etc. So I do think as a committee it's important to note the point, to note its impact on the poor, on the economy writ large, given the inflationary. But I do think the recommendation must be the review of the fuel price itself, because that is, as a point of consensus, something that even National Treasury have been calling for, and as something that we can endorse, because that will deal principally with the question that says, how do you ameliorate or deal with the burdensome nature of what this means prospectively? Because the points that have been made by members about its impact on transport costs, input costs, all of that are well made. I think for us, in terms of the Division of Revenue Bill and the increase in the levy, we must note it, and I would urge that the committee take a view that equally so encourages a review on the fuel price. There are preceding points, and the preceding points are other revenue-raising mechanisms must be sought. Because we can't sit here next year and be, if you like, creative people around which tax must be increased next. It's unsustainable. Next year, we can't say, okay, this year we debated VAT and fuel. Next year, we're going to go fuel, and maybe next year we'll try PIT, maybe medical aid tax cuts. Maybe No. Other additional revenue sources must be found. And I think that is we fair on our committee, notwithstanding the need for GDP growth, notwithstanding for all of those which are made in subsequent points. But I think in just dealing, because that's what the point prior is trying to allude to. Additional revenue must be found. That's not the debate. Or at least if someone thinks that we shouldn't find any additional revenue, then I'm not sure. But I do think then that point, I think it's 10.1.1 comma, that of course there will be a negative impact on the fuel levy, and it would be amiss of us as a committee not to note that point. Honorable Mwali, then Honorable Mlefa.
Chairperson, one thing we should pick up from this discussion is that no one is disagreeing with the regressiveness of these two, which is VAT and fuel levy. We are now discussing the extent of the regressiveness when you are comparing these two. But the fact remains, this one that was suggested by the minister is a regressive tax. And it must be reflected on the report, because we are actually discussing and considering a report. It must be reflected there. And also, we cannot remove the fact that from the public, which was invited to comment on the report, they mentioned that it is a regressive tax, and we can't remove it.
No,
it must be reflected on the report that the public is in or took a position that this introduction of this fuel levy is a regressive tax.
I think the point is being included there. We can add word, but it's included. I don't think necessarily that it's not now not being included. Honorable Molefe.
Chair, to add injury to insult, it has been for a while now that we have observed the deteriorating geopolitical tensions in the Middle East, which indicate, if you are a prudent risk manager, indicate that there will be upward pressures on the fuel price, because the price of oil is likely to go up. And it looks like that risk is slowly materializing, because they say that Iran has closed a strait there, a passage for oil. But even before we knew, even before this happened, and we knew that there is tension there, and that tension is likely to put an upward pressure on the fuel price. So to increase the fuel levy in the face of a potential fuel price increases as a result of exogenous factors is imprudent.
I do think, honorable members, we could go around, because yes, I do take the point, and the matter, as I said to you, has been in multiple fora, notwithstanding our courts. I do think that the point that it is made, that it's a regressive impact, regressive tax, and that, honorable Molefe, the point that you bolster the point that I'm making, which is to say a review of the fuel pricing. Because here's the thing, it is important, not also in the light of the geopolitical tensions that are going to take place. So even prior to this issue, there was that. What I'm trying to not get us into a space of going is to say, we note the inputs of the public. We noted in the report that the fuel levy is regressive, and that an urgent call be made. What is within the locus control of Treasury? The locus of control of Treasury is to do the review of the fuel price and then make recommendations fitting post that review. Where we cannot be at now is at yea or nay, given the fact that the courts have ruled and this matter is here. So I am suggesting that we take the point that, not keeping in mind the regressive nature of the tax, that there must be an urgent review of the fuel price and that formula. Honourable Bateman.
Honourable Chair, yes, we would support that recommendation.
So if we can put it on there in that light, Mashile, can you read that sentence so that I know?
Yeah. The committee notes the negative impact of the fuel levy increase on the households that are already burdened by the high cost of living, and therefore calls for the review of the fuel price.
Peggy put as as noted by the public in submission.
At the end, right? As noted.
The South Africans have made their
Noted
submissions on this issue.
By the
Are you making textual submissions or making an argument? Yes, Honorable.
Today's going to be long. Chair, the review of the modulation of the fuel price, because it's got to do with the model that they're using. It's not the fuel price itself. It's how do they modulate it? I just want us to get the right wording so that I look at the proper modeling of a fuel price that is sustainable.
Yeah. I think there is a way. I forgot where they put the fuel levy. The fuel price model. I'm not sure there's a. No. Okay. Right. It's a fuel price. Have you put it there? The fuel price model.
yes.
Okay. With that as a bullet point, then I think it covers the points. Can we agree to move ahead with that arrangement? As noted by the Siap Engos. Right. Mashile, you'll clean this up. Honorable members, it is now. I'm going to, at this point, we're stopping just before 10.2. Please make a note at that point. Lunch is served, resuming now at 1:15. Can I ask that we have a half an hour lunch? I know honorable members here are hardworking citizens, but we did manage to get members here on a Monday with a threat of lunch. It would be unfair for us not for that threat to materialize. So can we take a break at 1:15? And if we can return at 1:45, that would be first prize. Meeting will be agenda at this point to resume. Give half time. No. Yes, come sit here. Is there? Sorry, Mashile, you must just. I'm reading 3 documents just about. Okay. Well, now we are on page. Yes, Honorable Bateman.
Just a small edit
On a new point.
No, just a small edit
politics.
on point halfway through paragraph 10.5. However, the committee is concerned that I think I was just a bit confused by what was maybe I'm misunderstanding the point here, but I was going to suggest that should be, however, the committee is concerned that the national debt continues to exceed national treasury's projections, perhaps, if that was what was being said, or are we talking about that economic growth continues to underperform national treasury's projections? It's midway through 10.5. The sentence starts with the word however. The committee is concerned that. .5. I heard 10.6. Did I mishear?
Just hold on, Honorable Kalega Mazibugo. I'm just trying to.
So we seem to be talking about debt. So I think.
Look,
I think that's what I'm suggesting. We should just say that the concern that the national debt continues to exceed national treasury's projections.
Yeah, that's all.
what we're trying to say.
That is all we are trying to say, because the truth of the matter is that the point we're trying to make there is that there's been a historical creep of where debt to GDP will peak to a different argument. Someone says, well, debt to GDP will peak at 75. If you look at version 1, version 2, version 3, and I know we're not discussing those, but there's a creep upwards of debt to GDP ratios. And therefore, this is a significant concern, because if we are saying this year debt to GDP will peak at 77%, next year, if the Minister of Finance says debt to GDP will peak at 80%, then it isn't really a peak, really. It's just a thumbsuck. That I think is the point we're trying to capture there. Honorable Galaga Mazibugo, and then let's go. Mashila, are you taking notes?
No, it's fine, Chair. I was saying that is, to me, is addressing Honorable Molife's concern. That sentence is actually saying what he said before. However, the committee is concerned that National Treasury continues to miss, the projection, either under or over projecting. I think that's what Molife's concern was. So it is also addressed there. That's what I wanted to say.
Can I suggest for projects is that missing its ceiling projections? That's my issue. The issue is that you can't say things are going to peak here and then in the medium term adjust and say they're going to peak there, because all it's saying to me is that actually there's something inherently wrong with your debt management strategy. And all it's saying to me also is that if you can't tell me that your debt to GDP will peak here, you are also indicating the fact that debt as an instrument can crowd out the rest of your other expenditure framework. Honorable Molefe.
Chair, I actually wanted to talk about 10.3, but since we are here, I can start here. The problem in South Africa is not the debt to GDP ratio. Our debt to GDP compared to other countries is actually not high, even at 76% and so on. In the 70s, it's not high. There are countries whose debt to GDP ratio goes over 100%. Our problem is debt service costs.
Sure.
That is where the debt hits the budget, debt service costs. And our debt service costs relative to our debt to GDP are high. And that is a management problem, the management of debt service costs, not the actual levels of the debt. So, we suggest that should come out. That I think this focus on debt to GDP is actually a wrong focus. It's barking at the wrong tree. The real issue is
debt service
costs. But the point that I wanted to make actually originally is on 10.3. Where we talk about the horizontal split, which is funds are allocated to national government, provincial government, and local government. The Treasury has made additional allocations outside of the provincial equitable share formula. And that is done without any justification for its determination. And these allocations, some provinces get them, some provinces don't get them. And this distorts the provincial allocation formula as agreed to. And as, as agreed to with the FFC and Parliament and so on. So what happens there is that there is this formula that's supposed to allocate and make sure that everything, we know where what is going. But then there is this funds that the Treasury puts aside and allocates to provinces without telling anyone, without being transparent about on what basis, without justification. And also without indicating why these monies are allocated to some provinces and why they are not being allocated to others. I think this must be raised as a concern because it distorts the division of revenue formula.
I mean, there are very stringent provisions that goes into the equitable share. And the equitable share, it's as a formula, I mean, we can debate whether it must be reviewed or not. But what I'm unclear is which of the additional funds you are making reference to. And I'd like to get that sense because okay. Sfiso, where can we make that point there? Because you mean are you referring to that 10.2 issue, 10.3 issue?
No, yeah, no. The issue that I'm raising, that there are additional allocations, is picked up in the report, in the body of the report, that there were some allocations that were made without justification. I don't know if you've seen it. All right,
Eric, can you do that so that Rebale Moho? But now we are having multiple discussions. Can we just finish the point in 10.6 and then we'll come back to this one? Because just put it there in 10. We were finishing that point above about debt to GDP and debt servicing costs. I think just to clarify the point that the main concern is the under projection of the ceiling as it pertains to debt to GDP, coupled with the fact that this has the adverse effect of debt servicing costs crowding out other expenditure. Mashila Wangutu.
Yes.
I was merely saying